Good morning, everyone. Just watched an interesting video of this young 30-year-old man talking about why, in his opinion, why birth rates are so low across the globe. And his opinion sounded very educated. He sounded like a reasonably intelligent individual. There wasn't nothing crazy about him. He looked like your average white dude, in his 30s. And he was saying how him and none of any of his friends or peers had kids. And his opinion, he was like, said, how many animals, how bad an animal has to be abused in order to not reproduce. And he went on this diatribe about blaming technology. He said technology, in his opinion, is to blame for this lack of mating and reproducing. If that was a fact, we would have stopped reproducing a long time ago. Humans are always advancing and coming up with new shit. So technology is not the answer, I'm afraid. And this is, of course, an opinion of this video. It's not based on anything other than my own personal observations and the observation of others as well. Now, in my opinion, it's not technology. It's wokeism is really a majority to blame. Now, hear me out before you start, getting the fire ready and the pitchforks and the torches. Hear me out. Back in the 80s is when this started. Well, actually in the 60s, if you really want to get technical, but it wasn't really. They had a lot of pushback back then. There were still a lot of conservative folk that were pushing back against that hippie free love movement crap. But by the time the 80s came, it was seeping into everyday life, society. You watch early episodes of like All in the Family. If you don't know what that show is, look it up. On this show, and this is back in the late 70s, early 80s, there was a trans person on that show. And right there should have been the indicator of the beginning. Once it's allowed and accepted in public population, on television, basically media for the time, that's when it started. By the time gay marriage was not only legalized, but accepted, that's when it started to pick up speed. So by 2000s, it was already everywhere. I mean, you were seeing rainbow folk everywhere. When back, I remember in the 80s, there was gay individuals, obviously openly gay individuals, but they were very far and few between. And I'm not saying these people weren't actually gay or anything like that. I'm just saying that they're far and few between. Most folk kept to themselves. And that was acceptable because nobody was flaunting their sexuality back then. No one was flaunting, their bedroom exploits, what they did behind closed doors, so to speak, which you don't even hear that term anymore, behind closed doors, because everyone's doing videos and OnlyFans, so there is no behind closed doors. Everything's transparent, aka fake. So you look at now with social media, video games, movies, you can see it very prevalent. It's very rare to find, especially in the video game world, which I've been playing video games since the Atari. I've seen it all. I've played it all, and I'm still playing. It's very difficult now to find a video game where the straight, white, tough guy is the hero. Now it's the butch lesbian or the gay individual that's the hero or the main character of the story. You take games out there, like most recently I've tried was a game called Avowed. And at first, it looked great, sounded great, it was an interesting, engaging storyline. Until right off the bat, the first companion you meet to go on your travels to stop this plague from happening. That's the whole basis of the story. Your first companion you end up meeting that you cannot not take with you. Now, this is the point I want to make. Most video games, you have choices. This game, you don't really have a lot of choices. First character, named Kai, this reptilian snakeskin individual, has a whole quest, whole mission on tracking down what happened to his gay lover. Now, you don't have to do the quest, but throughout the game, you're bombarded with the other companions you end up meeting, banter about it, and so on and so forth. And one of the other companions you meet is painfully and obviously lesbian. And again, I don't have problems with these characters. I have problems when these characters are the only types of characters. There's other games out there, that too many to list, that are pushing this narrative. You look at a game called Call of Duty, which I've stopped playing a long time ago, by the way, because it just got ridiculous. But in this game, the most recent installment into the franchise, yep, you guessed it, big tough butch Diesel Dyke. Sorry, I'm not supposed to use that word, but lesbian. Comes in and saves the weak white man. Look it up. It's fucking ridiculous. And now let's look back at the 80s. Being a straight white male wasn't an identity, it's just who you was. You didn't flaunt it, you didn't push it out there. You know, you're always going to have some folk that kind of strut their shit, do their peacock crap. But it wasn't everywhere you looked. The way they're painting the picture is they've been oppressed all these years, and they've been put down and pushed down into the mud, and they're somehow the victims. Sorry, I'm walking the dog. Somehow they're the victims. Somehow they're the ones that suffered, you know? And that's not true. As a kid that grew up in the 80s, yes, there were gay people around, but not many. Most of them kept themselves, like I said, and they were decent people. I knew several of them. There was a kid in school that was openly gay, but he wasn't a douchebag. He was a decent dude. He's just, effeminate. Of course we picked on him, but we didn't pick on him in a harsh manner to make him want to run a razor across the friggin' vein. But in that way, we made him part of our little clique, Like he was gay, but he was our gay dude, you know what I mean? He wasn't outcast. He was included the same way guys would include each other by ribbing on them, picking on each other, calling each other names and shit, and, poking fun at one another. That's how you include people. Somewhere down the line, since the 80s though, our manhood has been neutered and our canines have been removed. And we've been, unfortunately, allowing the younger generation to grow up weak and soft and sensitive. Now, I'm not saying it's a bad thing to have some sensitivities. You don't got to be a rough, abrasive douchebag like me all the time. Because and I'm being completely honest here, being rough and abrasive and a douchebag all the time is very exhausting. It really is, because you feel like you're holding up an excessive amount of weight that you don't need to. You don't need to hold that weight up. But it's just how I'm wired. I mean, not to get into the whole psychology of the whole business, but because that's a long diatribe. But the point is, you don't have to be that way. But you don't have to be all weak either. We need to find some balance. Allow people to be who they is, if that's who they really are, and not following a trend. At the same time, At the same time, let's not weaken the future generation, because what's going to happen, what people don't realize what's going to happen when birth rates drop and plummet, is us old timers who think that, all right, it's retirement time. It won't be retirement time. We'll have to keep working because there'll be no one else to do the hard jobs. Now, people don't really think about gentlemen on a oil rig much. Some people probably assume that they do this job just because there's a big paycheck attached to it. What they don't realize This is a very important job. You know, the more we use our natural resources, the more they need to be replenished. And so folks that are doing that oil field, you know, roughneck work, kind of essential if you think about it. You know, they're the ones out there making sure that our machines and vehicles are still running so we can go do our jobs. You got soldiers out there right now that, in my opinion, I'm not taking away anything from our armed services or the individuals that do that for a living. Not taking anything, you know, much utmost respect. But let's face it, today's soldiers would be whipped compared to, say, World War II or even Vietnam era guys. You know, you compare a modern soldier to a Korean, you know, a soldier who fought in Korea or Vietnam or over in Germany. You know, those guys were tough as nails and twice as hard. You know, you couldn't stop them with a fucking bullet. You know, they were just ready to eat fucking glass and keep marching, you know. You look at our soldiers today and we got so much technology and so much advanced weaponry that, hell, they rarely have to be boots on the ground anymore. They can send in planes and drones and unmanned vehicles and whatnot. Our weaponry has far exceeded our capacity to use. So it's to the point where we're almost there where we're not even going to be using human beings on the field. And, you know, obviously on the surface that looks great. You know, no more people getting sent to die, no more people getting cut down in battle. But you're missing one integral part. This act of war and the threat of impending doom is important to our species. We do our best work when under pressure. We do our best work when our lives are threatened. We do the most amazing things when against all odds. Not to mention, look at the people that are inspired by these soldiers and the things they create. You look back in the early days of, say, comic books. One of the most popular comic book heroes of all time, Captain MF America. Captain America was created based on soldiers in World War II. Think about that for a hot second. One of the most popular characters to this day, one of the most popular comic book characters of all time is Captain America. And he was created based on soldiers in World War II. I mean, obviously a fabrication, obviously not, you know, true. You know, no one's handing out super soldier serum as far as I know, unless it was basically just steroids, who knows. But that's beside the point. The point is, what do the young folk got to look up to now? What do the young folk got for inspiration now? What do they got? They got rainbow-haired sissies. That's what they got. They got men who paint their nails. They got individuals that have no idea what that thing down there is used for. That's what we got. That's what the young folk got to be inspired by. That's what my kids got to be inspired by. Thank God my kids are into music and heavy metal and whatnot, because, you know, at least you got some roar there. You got some teeth there. Say what you will. I know this video has kind of went on, but I figured it's something to do while walking the dog in this early, miserly morning. Of course, he's trying to yank my arm out of socket, but it don't work that way. And walking the dog is a good metaphor for what's going on. Look at the dog like society, like young society. Look how he's walking. He's charging ahead. He's pulling against his leash. He's yanking. He's tugging. He's giving it all he's got. But for what? He wants to stop and smell stuff. He's curious about the world. He wants to know things. Well, folks, that's like our young folk. That's like your young people. Every little thing that moves, every little different smell he detects, he wants to investigate. Well, if we, the ones holding the leash, are not leading him in a proper direction, he's going to run out to the road. He's going to run out in the woods. He's going to run all over the place. He's going to get ticks. He's going to get hit by a car. Things are going to happen. That's why it's important to keep some values. Like I said before, it's not that it's a crime or should be a crime for folk if they really do bend the other way. No, we shouldn't persecute them or burn them or do any kind of bullshit like that to them. Do unto others, as they say. But instead of putting them on a pedestal and practically worshiping them, I think we should just let them either integrate into society properly and follow a decent, common ground moral code that everyone can adhere to, no matter what faith, no matter what ideology. That is the key. But for fuck's sake, we gotta stop with this pushing the narrative of weak, limp-wristed men as heroes, and stop pushing the idea that women are super strong warriors that have to protect the weak, frail white man. We have to stop pushing this narrative where black folk need white Karens to protect and speak for them. We need to stop pushing this narrative that everybody that crosses a border illegally is a hero. We need to stop pushing this ideology that if you're straight, white, male, and Christian, you are the ultimate enemy. And just to wrap this up and to further my point, you have folks out there that are literally bowing down to the president as if he's some kind of messiah or some kind of savior. And I hate to break it to you folks. And no, I am not a supporter of any politician because they're all crooked. I don't care what side they pretend to be on. They're on one side and it's not ours. You look at all the worshiping going on of Mr. Donald Trump. You got people selling onesies with his slogans and his picture on them. Onesies. Newborn kids are wearing this shit. Pre-programmed from birth. And it'd be no different if it was Biden or Pelosi or Harris or any of them. Obama. Any of them. It would be no different. You just change the name and the face and boom, it's the same fucking propaganda all over again. We should not be putting politicians on a pedestal because they are not the fucking heroes. They're not the heroes. They are not the ones that we need to be idolizing. These people are the ones stuffing their pocket with our hard-earned money. And on that point, no, I still haven't got my tax return yet. Still get the same bullshit, software updates. My point with the Trump thing is, you can look up any kind of documentary and you can see the zealotry that's going on worshiping this man. He's putting up posts pretending to be Jesus. And yeah, it's a joke. It's a troll. It's a joke. It's what he does. You know, he likes to poke the bear a bit. And that's fine. But you're mocking the Lord and Savior. You're mocking people's religion. Does that sound very American to you? Does that sound proper to you? Poking a whole religion? Mocking it? That'd be like us mocking Allah or Buddha or whatever the hell it is people believe in. I mean, I do openly mock Satan, so I guess I'm guilty on that. But Satan's a fucking loser. He lost, and he'll never win. That's the point. Why side with something that's always going to lose? I guess it's because of rebellion. But my point is, Donald Trump has not done hardly anything for the lower class American people other than make things more difficult. And before you start, again, getting the pyre ready to throw me on it, keep in mind, where are you versus back when Bill Clinton was in charge or even Obama was in charge? Where were you? How were you back then compared to how are you now? You don't want to believe that? Fine. Look up the cost of eggs from 1980 till now, and that'll prove every point I've ever made about politics. You look up the cost of eggs from then to now. Every politician swore uphill and downhill that they were going to fix everything. They were going to make everything better. The taxpayer was going to be happy. Lower taxes, lower prices. What did we get? Well, don't take a political analyst or a super genius to know the answer to that question. Anyway, folks, hope you all have a really good day at work, and I'll see you in the next one.